I'm going to go through some of the different ways that you commonly spend money in your marketing. I want to talk about what you can expect things to cost, whether you should go with like a DIY option or if you should go with a more premium option. Video content is going to be the most expensive content that you can create, but it's also the highest in demand right now. If you have the financial flexibility and you are short on time, advertising can be great. Advertising helps you save on time when it comes to growth.
Welcome to the Media Books Podcast, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing. Owning a virtual firm today means having a professional and modern online presence, and in this podcast, we talk about how to do just that. My name is Kristen Corey, and I'm the owner of Media Books, a media agency that provides creativity exclusively to accounting firms. And if you're an accounting firm owner, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Media Books Podcast. I am back in the States officially when this episode is going live, but right now I am actually sitting in my kitchen in a mess of boxes and my dog's food bowl, and it's chaos here. But I am determined to get a podcast episode out and talk to you guys about a fun subject that I've actually been thinking about and marinating on for a while. It's not too long ago, I actually saw a post in a Facebook group asking how much is a reasonable amount to be spending on marketing. And this is such a loaded question because very similar to accounting services, how much you spend on marketing is going to be a similar situation to how much should you spend on accounting services. Those services can scale from simple monthly bookkeeping of just a couple transactions on maybe one credit card a month to full-blown C-suite CFO services. So there's a lot of things to consider: website, SEO, content creation, podcasting, video content. How aggressive you want to be with all those strategies. And so we're going to get into it in this episode. But first, I need to talk about a headline. So there was a recent Threads conversation that came out with the CEO of Instagram. Basically, whenever Instagram puts anything out, he's kind of the one to announce it. And the conversation is basically about, who's seeing your content? Should you pay attention to followers? Should you pay attention to things like engagement of views and likes? And essentially, he says that not everyone that follows your account is going to see your content. And there's a couple factors that play into this. Not everyone logs into Instagram every day. So if you post something on any given day, that person may just not even log into the app. You also need to consider that some people are following so many accounts that are producing so much content, they don't consume enough content to see every post that is produced. So for example, if you're an account and you will make the numbers easy, you follow 100 accounts on Instagram and those 100 accounts produce one post or reel every day. If you log into Instagram and you only consume 20 posts, then you're not going to see a lot of the content. It is likely going to be the post that you interact with the most. Well, yes, the most and the most consistently, but there's still a lot of content out there that you are not consuming. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not interested in that content. Everyone just has so much utility when it comes to what they do and do not consume. And he was explaining this, and it wasn't necessarily revolutionary, but people did not react well to his response. A lot of people basically were sharing screenshots of their analytics and said things like, I have this post that did really well, but it only got 26 views from my followers, whereas my non-followers, it was like 15,000 views. So things aren't adding up. If a post is doing really well with non-followers, shouldn't followers be seeing it frequently too, or be higher up in their feed? The numbers weren't adding up in alignment with what he was saying. And ultimately, I think there's two things to take away from this, because the algorithm, how you actually get a post in front of people, it's still a little fuzzy. Everyone feels like they kind of crack the algorithm. Some accounts are super successful. Sometimes people's content does really well. I'm sure you've experienced this where maybe you have some posts that, do okay every once in a while, and then you post something that seems off the cuff that, you didn't think would do well, and it does extremely well. So a lot of people have trouble trying to figure out what exactly does work, and especially social media managers. For people that are constantly looking at the numbers, it's not always as specific as financial numbers, where you can directly see where the math and everything lines up. Social media analytics feel a little bit more abstract. So there's two real takeaways that I want you to have from this headline and this conversation that Masari had with people on Threads. One, it's important to curate your feed, your audience, and the content that you create to a specific audience. So maybe you're in a situation where you're noticing that most of the accounts that are following you aren't necessarily people that you don't want to work with, but they're not people that would buy from you. Maybe it's a lot of accountants and bookkeepers, and you're thinking, I sell bookkeeping services. Why are bookkeepers following me? They're probably not going to buy from me. It's time to ask yourself, is a lot of the content that you're consuming, or a lot of the accounts that you're following, just other bookkeepers, and you have found yourself in kind of the realm of bookkeeping and accounting influencers, and you're not really getting outside of that. You're not really breaking into different industries or different parts of social media. So that's something to be mindful, is figure out what room, more or less, you are in on social media. If you're finding that you're just finding a lot of other accountants on there, it may be because you're interacting with those accounts too much. So definitely go try to find other small businesses. If you niche, find other people in that niche. Try to get away from the accounts and the accounting industry influencers that you follow on social media. Personally, what I recommend, I like having a personal and a business account. On my business account for Media Books, it is all accountants, all bookkeepers, all the time. That is the content that we create. Those are the accounts that we follow. Those are the accounts that we engage with. On my personal channel, I follow a ton of marketers. I follow a ton of web design people, any sort of I do small business influencers on both the business and my personal accounts, but try to be more intentional with really kind of the world you're surrounding yourself with when it comes to your specific account. The second takeaway that I want you to have is it is okay to repeat yourself across all social media channels. People are not seeing your posts as often as you think they do. And those that are seeing every single thing that you post probably like your message enough that they are okay with hearing it multiple times. Okay, so how this podcast episode is going to work is I'm going to go through some of the different ways that you commonly spend money in your marketing, on your marketing in your accounting firm. I want to set expectations as far as what you can expect with pricing. I want to talk about, what you can expect things to cost, how to help you make a decision on whether you should go with like a DIY option or if you should go with a more premium option. Help you plan, make a budget, talk about those pros and cons of the various options, and hopefully leave you feeling a little bit confident when you go out and find your next marketing quote. So the first area that I want to talk about is your website. There's a couple different components of putting together and running a website. The first thing is your website subscription. Where are you going to build your website? There are three primary places that people typically have their website built on: Squarespace, WordPress, and Wix. Squarespace is about $23 a month. WordPress is about $25. Wix is about $29. Each of those platforms have different plans, but I chose kind of the business one and the ones with the most similar plan. Typically, these ones have features like commerce, SEO, basic marketing tools, and then of course they differ a little bit depending on whether you pay monthly or annually, but they're all around the same price. So with comparable pricing, it's kind of going to be the next question of things that you want to consider with which platform you go with. First question is, who's going to be managing your website? If you are going to be self-managing your own website, I recommend Squarespace. Frankly, even if you aren't, I recommend Squarespace. That's why we chose it. We chose to be pros at it because it is such an easy platform to pick up and start to learn quickly and change things like text, images, adding a page on your website, whatever you need to do. SEO features are really user-friendly, even if you don't have a web design background. WordPress is kind of on the opposite end of that. You can build really great, beautiful, professional, modern websites on WordPress, but they are, depending on what plugins you use and themes, it can get complicated really quickly. So you do want to consider long-term, from now until you can hire someone on a regular basis who is going to be keeping your website up to date. The second thing you want to consider is what features do you need with your website? So the pricing I listed, they're all very basic, like web design, business plans for whatever you need. But if you do need like more premium features, like if you're going to sell a digital product on your website and you want to use Square or something, you may need a more advanced plan with a platform like Squarespace. So make a list of everything you need, everything you want, compare plans, and then really get an idea of who you want to be managing your website. And with that, it's also important who is going to be designing your website. And there's a couple different routes you can take when it comes to web design. There are website template companies where you almost have no input in the design. It's very cookie cutter, very, not fancy is not the right word, but it's not memorable. It's sort of like the most basic website you can think of typically is where you find these website templates. And what you'll do is essentially you'll enter in, your business name, your services, maybe a few photos, your address, email, and then they'll put it on a templated website. Sometimes I think you can update the colors. It's very cut and dry. And this is basically the minimum, the cheapest you can go when it comes to having some sort of custom website. And so those are around sometimes $30 a month. The caveat with this is sometimes you can only have your website up as long as you are with this company. So if you are building email lists or if you have your domain or something built with them, you need to keep that subscription up as long as you're with them, which isn't too bad because frankly, it's kind of the same thing with Squarespace or WordPress. As long as you're paying them, as long as you can have your website up. So that's something to consider. You have that very basic option. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum is a fully custom built website. And of course, there's websites where you can have someone come in and like from scratch do coding. But frankly, I do not recommend that for any accounting website. Generally, you're not storing any private security information there. And that can easily cost you over $10,000. But if you just want a custom built website on a platform like WordPress or Squarespace or Wix, that can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000. And that can be for a very competent, great web designer. Sometimes those designers have a more diverse portfolio. At MediaBooks, we do custom built web design on Squarespace for $2.2 thousand. And the reason for that is that we're able to meet at a lower price point is because we only work with accounting firms. Our process is very cut and dry. We don't do a lot of custom pages, that custom in the sense that since our clients are always the same, typically you guys need a home, about, services, contact, and blog. Rarely do we have anyone come in saying, I need, a special page just for my widgets I'm selling or something like that. So we're able to meet you at a lower price point because we have a very straightforward process. We know how things are going to go. Things are generally very consistent and the same. Whereas people who have a more diverse portfolio need to be a little bit more flexible and need to allow for more time and budget. So there's that. We also include a 1-year subscription with Squarespace in our plan. You get the first year of Squarespace free. And then we also do a training video on how to use Squarespace. So when it comes to web design, there's, like I said, quite a bit of a range. If you are getting quotes for anything above, I would say $6,000 for a custom built website, you should hopefully be getting something else included in that package where you'd want to have an itemized invoice, because after that, I think things start to get a little bit too fancy for what I would recommend accounting firms need. The next thing to really consider is SEO when it comes to your website. SEO can be broken down into two areas. One is tools, and the second is experts. If you're going to hire someone, bring someone in to do SEO on your website. When it comes to SEO tools, I've talked about SEMrush a lot. It's a really great app and that can help you kind of advance your Google rankings. They have a lot of different ways that they do it. It sounds like it would be just a simple, straightforward thing, but there are a ton of ways that you can dive into this. And the app is about $80 a month. And that's pretty normal for the range of what other advanced SEO tools are out there. However, I would really only recommend using the subscription when SEO is a primary pillar in your marketing strategy. If it is just something you're casually doing, if it's maybe a secondary item in your marketing strategy, I would just they have a 30-day free trial. Use it for the 30 days. Get what you need out of it. And then if down the road you want to make SEO a primary focus in your marketing strategy, then you can implement it. But up till then, you can expect about $80 a month for top-notch SEO tools. Likewise, with experts, again, if SEO is going to be a primary part of your strategy, SEO experts can cost up to $100 an hour. SEO can include just one-time things like dipping into your website, making sure you're using the proper formatting, make sure that you're labeling and you have all your metadata set up. This can be kind of a one-time thing that you can hire an SEO expert for, but it can also be a reoccurring service that you pay for. So if you've heard me talk about SEO at all, you know a big part of SEO is making sure your website stays up to date, and that's going to include things like producing content. So you can have an SEO expert that checks your website, a couple times to make sure it's fully optimized. But then you can also have an SEO expert that creates content for your website. So again, it's going to be dependent on how aggressive you want to be with your SEO strategy. Okay, so that was all about just your website, just what should be your marketing budget when it comes to your website. The next area I want to talk about is content creation. Now, your content creation can be broken up into a few different sections: written content, graphics, and then video content. And I'm going to start with written content. This is going to cover things like blogging, social media, email campaigns, any sort of creative type writing that you're doing for your business. And the pro is that in the last couple years or so, this has got way cheaper because of apps like ChatGPT. Whenever you use these apps or you use AI, you still typically need to tweak or adjust it a little bit after the content is written. It can be really great in helping you optimize content or just give you prompts. But if you're just copying and pasting, it is very unlikely you're going to see results. And that's because if you've been paying attention at all to what's going on with AI, really it's just sort of a summary of content that's been regurgitated. So to put your own twist on it, to have your own voice, you do want to make sure that you're adding a little bit of personalization to the content. So it is an option, it is a free option, but I would say in order to get any quality, any value out of it, you still need to have a little bit of your own personal touch on it. Another way that you can kind of approach any sort of content creation with writing is work with dedicated copywriters. Depending on what they're writing, whether it's marketing content, sales content, website copy, or you're having accounting specific content, this can range anywhere from $20 an hour to $75 an hour. And the reason for that here is if you have someone that is just writing general marketing content. So for example, let's say they're writing a social media post and the post is about a new blog post or a new podcast episode. A general marketer can write something like, hey, there's a new blog post up. It just went live. You can check the link in our bio to give it a read. Any marketer can write that. But if you're having someone write accounting specific copy, so like a download that explains what a balance sheet is, what an income statement is, how to read a cash flow statement, that's not just requiring marketing knowledge, that's also requiring accounting knowledge. And so that person is going to charge you at a more premium rate. And that's where you can expect that $75 an hour rate to come in. Now, the caveat here with hiring dedicated copywriters is the best messaging is always going to come from you or whoever is the face of your business. So if you're able to write or at least contribute to the content writing in some sort of way, it is definitely worth your time. I will say at MediaBooks, our content for our clients improves over time simply because I get to know them better. I learn how they talk. I learn their mannerisms or what they like, don't like. We email back and forth. I'm able to kind of catch on to their tone a little bit more. For example, I have one client that hates the word bestie, as do I, but I thought it was maybe appropriate for her brand at one point. And she's like, why are you using this? I don't like that word at all. And I'm like, sweet, I hate that word too. But if you like the word, it's totally fine. I don't know. There's something about it I don't like. It feels buzzwordy to me. But over time, if you do have a copywriter, I recommend working with them on a regular basis, working with someone you really like and that can capture your tone. That way, the caveat of adding your own voice to your copy can come through simply in the relationship that you have with this other person. The second area to consider when it comes to social media or any sort of content creation is graphics, the visuals, what people are going to see. And if we're just talking about like social media posts or images for advertisements, Canva can be a really quick and cheap option to get your content out there. However, there's also going to be designers out there that prefer things like Photoshop for putting together graphics that have more flexibility. And so it's kind of something that you also need to consider with how cheap do you want to go? Who are you working with? Are you doing a DIY, in which case Canva is going to be great? Or do you want to hire someone and have a lot of your marketing strategy focus on just great design in your marketing? This all differs, little caveat here, this all differs pretty greatly from your logo. Canva does do logo graphics. However, I don't recommend using them. This is for a number of reasons, but primarily, a lot of times when logos are built on Canva, they aren't going to feel as premium or as well put together as something that is completely unique that you had a graphic designer put together. One option, if you are looking for something more inexpensive when it comes to your logo, is using a wordmark logo. A wordmark logo is, if you think of Xero or QuickBooks, it's just basically the name of the business in a unique font and with a unique color. That way people can easily identify your business name whenever they see it. And so that is one option if you want to go a more DIY route. I recommend going that route as opposed to using Canva. Okay, so keeping all that in mind, know that graphic designers can cost anywhere from $25 an hour to typically around $50 an hour. As I've mentioned, there are ways to reduce your costs, like using Canva, but even when it comes to your reoccurring social media content, there's even ways to reduce your costs when working with a professional graphic designer. For example, if you are looking to create a strategy that focuses solely on social media, you can ask your graphic designer to create 10 to 20 social media templates, and then have your admin or you or whoever you want to just use the templates over and over again. And this actually has multiple benefits. Not only is this a cheaper option for you, this can also help you create brand consistency as far as what you post on social media. You know, people seeing the same post over and over again, or the same form, not the same post, but the same formatting is going to be a visual cue to their brain that content is owned by you. Ownership, something that we definitely want. So this is something that we actually do at MediaBooks. Again, for good marketing practices. And then also it helps us save time when it comes to creating content. Every time we create a meme or a quote post, we don't have to recreate the wheel with the different sort of graphics and design of the social media posts. So that's one way you can work with a professional graphic designer, but reduce your costs there. Next is video content. This is like the bad news part, because video content is going to be the most expensive content that you can create, but it's also the highest in demand right now. So if you've been online, you know, with YouTube, short reels on Instagram, short videos on Facebook, it doesn't matter where you are. Short form video content is just going to be like the most expensive kind of content to create. So very similar to SEO, if this is going to be a primary part of your marketing strategy, that is when I would consider optimizing. And it's going to be most expensive for a couple of reasons. One is that it is actually very challenging to create video content. Someone needs to be the person on the video, and then someone needs to put the video together. Not only that, but it also probably takes some skill. So the rate is typically going to be between $30 to $75 an hour. It's also time consuming. So you have this higher rate plus the time it takes to actually watch the content. So I recently brought someone in to help me with my video and podcast content. I'm not just paying them to just, cut and edit, but they're actually having to watch all the content to see if I coughed or my internet disconnected or if something happened. So at minimum, if my episode is 20 minutes long, that's 20 minutes they're more or less editing, but they're also just listening to me talk. So if you are doing video content, that is something to consider. It is going to be time consuming, and that goes into their hourly rate. Of course, you can do maybe like a paid per project rate, but typically with this kind of work, you're going to find maybe more hourly rate type freelancers. So something else you can kind of consider if you are wanting to do video content, but find a more cheaper option, is work with a video editor to do something like an intro and an outro. So it can be high level, high quality, and then use other more DIY apps like Loom to fill in the body of the content. So you can have a very premium introduction, your recording on an app like Loom, and then your outro with a high quality ending. It's an option that you can use in the meantime. Not the greatest thing to do long term, but something to kind of hold you over until you can kind of hire someone to do the full editing. The last thing I want to talk about is just when it comes to content wise, is some miscellaneous items. So email campaigns, I want to talk about apps for those. Typically, apps can cost anywhere from $10 to $40 a month. When it comes to choosing an app that is right for you, you're going to need to consider things like how big your email list is, how often you're going to be sending campaigns, and if you plan on working with a designer or self-managing. If you do plan on working with a designer, an app like MailChimp or HubSpot can be great because typically they have a lot of blank blocks that you can add. So it does require more of a design eye and more work to put together a great looking email campaign. Whereas apps like Flodesk have a lot of templates and layouts and design features built in so that you can quickly put together a design. It's not as much of a blank slate. So something to consider if you're deciding on those different email campaign apps. Podcasting. Again, podcasting is kind of similar to video content and that it can be fairly inexpensive and that you have sort of a one-time upfront cost of all your podcast equipment. You can learn how to DIY edit and publish the content. If you have a website on Squarespace, you can even have your podcast published on there for free. So it can be a very easy way to just get your podcast up and running. Having said that, though, if you do want to have your podcast be more of the primary focus of your marketing strategy, you will need to pay someone to help you edit the audio content, help you set it up on all the different platforms. And that too can cost anywhere from $30 to $75 an hour. Like so many remote workers, I am picky when it comes to my tech. I want a simple user interface, something that integrates with all the apps I'm already using, and I don't want to be nickel and dimed for every feature. I have run campaigns for plenty of accounting firms and used nearly every app under the sun, but for the past 4 years, I have been using Flodesk at MediaBooks. Flodesk offers a minimalistic user interface that does not cut back on any features. With workflows, automations, email campaigns, and advanced analytics, all for one price, I have no plans on switching anytime soon. And if you want to check out Flodesk, you can get 50% off for your first year by simply clicking the link in the show notes. Last area I'm going to talk about is advertising. And we used to do advertising management at MediaBooks, but it was just not something that I frankly enjoyed. And part of it was it can be a very expensive part of your marketing budget. If you have the financial flexibility and you are short on time, advertising can be great. Advertising helps you save on time when it comes to growth. Organic is very slow, but if you have the time and you are busy enough and you kind of want to take things slow in your business, then advertising is probably not a great option. So kind of, I guess, depends on where you are at with your entire business plan. With advertising, really how this is going to benefit you if you have a healthy budget is, let's say you put an ad out. With the ad, you can't do something like $25. And the reason for that is when you post an ad on Google, for example, Google needs time to learn who your ad appeals to. So it's going to test your ad out in multiple different markets and kind of work within their own parameters, but they want the ad to work for you. They want people to click on it. And so that takes time for them to test it out. So the longer you have your ad running, the more successful it's going to be. But this does mean that you need to have the financial budget available to kind of work through that trial period. And that's where things can get sticky. That's where it can get a little tough, because if you don't necessarily have the financial budget and you're hoping for an ad that just brings in all the leads very quickly, it can be disappointing. So something to kind of consider with advertising. If you have a really healthy marketing budget, it can be a great option. If not, I would recommend other options. Now, we've talked about all the different ways you can spend money on marketing in your accounting firm. What do you do with all this information? I realize I just word vomited a lot all over you. But I want to kind of talk about the two different ranges. On one end, we had a lot of DIY free options where maybe if you're just getting started or you don't have a huge marketing budget, what can you do? And really, if you consider all those different pieces, you can easily get by DIY plus, a less than $100 a month marketing budget. That is a definitely doable option. On the other end, if you want to have a more aggressive strategy, the sky's the limit. Really, that's the thing when it comes to a marketing budget. If someone comes in and says they're going to charge you $10,000 a month for a marketing budget, the next question needs to be, okay, what does that include? Because as you can see, as I've gone through all these different options, that can add up quickly, but you're also going to probably expect this person to be a full in-house marketer, which is entirely possible. If I was in the position to be a full in-house marketer for an accounting firm, what I'd be doing is I'd be daily posting on social media, high quality current content. So talking about things that are going on in the news that day. I'd be blogging with SEO strategies. I would be using SEO tools. I would be updating our website with SEO, making sure that not only do we have content going out on a regular basis, but the website is optimized with SEO. I'd be doing regular email campaigns. I would be even segmenting them out to, business clients versus individual tax clients. I would maybe be posting content on YouTube or podcast content on a minimum weekly basis. I would be trying to figure out how to do ghostwriting for the firm as guests in different publications. I'd have our partners kind of write into these publications and, we put together content that they can deliver. I'd be engaging with other accounts, executing and planning campaigns. There's so much that you can be doing on a day-to-day basis when it comes to marketing. And so this is all to say, how much should you be spending on marketing? You need to answer a few questions for yourself first. First is, what is your budget? What can you reasonably afford? How aggressive do you want to be with your strategy? Do you want quick growth or are you looking for a slow and steady? Do you want to DIY? Do you have time to DIY? If you're just starting out, you're probably more on the DIY end. But if you're deep in the trenches and you're just barely lifting your head up to eat, you probably hopefully have enough of a marketing budget that you can afford to bring someone in and have them implement a lot of these strategies. And maybe that doesn't mean that they're in there full time working with you, but hopefully that they can take a lot of that off your plate and you don't necessarily need to be creating graphics in Canva. So strategies really that I recommend is really focus on what is your marketing strategy and what expenses are going to cater to that marketing strategy, because then that's going to be able to drive the rest of your budget and help you understand what you should put a focus on. I am very intentional in making sure whatever marketing tips and tricks I share are tailored to the accounting industry. And as a result, I have built a pretty awesome community of accountants and bookkeepers. And while I love sharing advice on how to improve your website or capture the next great lead, I know you may have other challenges facing your firm, which is why I love partnering with other service and product providers that support the accounting industry. If you are one of those professionals that focuses on serving accountants, I want you to know that MediaBooks now provides multiple advertisement opportunities. You can promote your podcast, app, or services on the MediaBooks podcast or our newsletter and grow your reach. To learn more, visit mediabooksagency.com/sponsors or check out the link in our show notes. There you can find our media kit and apply to be a sponsor. MediaBooks, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing.